Okay. Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the VTA Board of Directors meeting for Thursday, September 6th. We'll call the meeting to order. Elaine, will you please call roll? Thank you very much.
Ex officio Board Member Bruins. Board Member Carr. Board Member Chavez. Alternate Board Member Cortese. Alternate Board Member Davis. Board Member Dieppe. Alternate Board Member Harney. Alternate Board Member Hendricks. Board Member Jones. Board Member Camus. All right. Board Member McAllister.
Yes.
Board Member Nunez. Board Member Perales. Alternate Board Member Rennie. Board Member Vaidyanathan. Board Member Yeager. Vice Chairperson O'Neill.
Present.
Chairperson Liccardo.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Please rise now for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, item 1.3 is orders of the day. We have a minor change to item 6.4 is the designation of the applicant agent for the California Office of Emergency Services. The red line version is at your place and on the public table. Staff is requesting the following changes. We're going to move 6.16, BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 Relocation Plan to the regular agenda. The item will be heard following the conclusion of agenda item 7.5. We're going to remove closed session item 9.1.a from the agenda, and I ask to defer item 7.4, which is amendments to the administrative code. And are there any other changes to the order of the agenda? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. We're on to the awards and commendations. And item 2.1 is a recognition of our retirees with over 25 years of service. Chrissy Victoria, Associate HR Analyst, will introduce our honorees tonight.
Good afternoon, board members and audience. Our first recognition goes to Albert Reed, Coach Operator. Albert began his career with the Santa Clara Transit District as a coach operator in April of 1980. Albert attained 35 years of safe driving, earning the prestigious 2 Million Miles Operator Safety Award. Albert displayed a high level of professionalism and was highly respected by all who knew and worked with him. Albert provided 38 years of distinguished public service and was an asset to VTA. Congratulations to Albert Reed. Marty Armand, Light Rail Operator. Marty began his career with Santa Clara County Transit District as a coach operator in March of 1981 and was promoted to light rail operator in October of 1990. Martin functioned as a light rail line instructor and was a role model to his fellow co-workers, displaying a positive demeanor and passion for his work. Marty attained 29 years of safe driving, earning the prestigious 2 Million Miles Operator Safety Award. Marty provided 37 years of outstanding public service and was an asset to VTA. Congratulations to Marty de Armand. Next commendation goes to Janice Brook, Transportation Superintendent. Janice began her career with the Santa Clara County Transit District as a coach operator in 1981. Janice was promoted to Floating Division Dispatcher in 1991, Transportation Supervisor in 1995, Transit Division Supervisor in 2009, and Transportation Superintendent in 2014. Janice developed a training program for the advanced communication system that replaced the previous radio systems in VTA buses. Janice was recognized for being a fair and consistent supervisor. Janice provided 36 years of notable public service and was an asset to VTA. Congratulations to Janice Brock. Our next commendation goes to Trish Kane, Contracts Manager, Silicon Valley Rapid Transit. Trish began her career with the Santa Clara County Transit District as an account clerk 1 in 1987 and changed her classification to Contracts Administrator in 1997. Trish was promoted to Contracts Administrator 2 in 1999, Contracts Program Manager in 2009, and Contracts Manager Silicon Valley Rapid Transit in 2011. Trish received commendation for negotiating all technology professional services, which resulted in the support agreements and contracts of VTA's information technology infrastructure. Trish provided 31 years of outstanding public service and was a valuable asset to VTA. Congratulations to Trish Kane. Next one is George Ramos, Senior Communication Systems Analyst. George began his career with Santa Clara County Transit District. George began his career with the Santa Clara County Transit District as a signal maintainer in November of 1987 and was promoted to signal supervisor in June of 2001. George changed his classification to Communication Systems Analyst in December 2007 and continued to move up to Senior Communication Systems Analyst in April of 2013. George conveyed his historical and valuable knowledge of VTA divisions and departments to his peers. George provided 30 years of notable public service and was a valuable asset to VTA. Congratulations to George Ramos. Next commendation is Daniel Sanchez, Service Worker, 4-person. Daniel began his career with Santa Clara County Transit District as a facilities worker in April of 1990 and was promoted to service worker in November of 1990. Daniel changed his classification to coach operator in September of 2005 and continued to move up to service worker 4-person in September of 2012. Daniel radiated the true meaning of commitment to hard work and built a strong service worker team. Daniel provided 28 years of distinguished public service and was a valuable asset to VTA. Congratulations to Daniel Sanchez. There are several retirees who are not able to be here today, so please allow me to acknowledge them. Coach operator Frank Kuwabara, who provided 39 years of service. Bus dispatcher Esteban Aranda provided 38 years of service. Light rail technical trainer Gerald Horner provided 38 years of service. Assistant superintendent Laura Jimenez provided 32 years of service. Service worker David Arustugi provided 31 years of service. Facilities maintenance coordinator Kendall Whitson provided 30 years of service. Facilities worker Jimmy Briones provided 35 years of service. And last, coach operator Wilfredo Mirafuente provided 28 years of service. That concludes our retirement commendation.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Christy, and thanks to each one of our dedicated public servants who have served for many decades and are now moving on to the next stage of their lives, both those who are here and those who couldn't make it. And thank you to all who cheered them on. Item number 3 is public comment. I encourage those with customer service concerns to contact our customer service department after you make your comments, and their contact information is right up here on the screen. So I'll call the individuals who like to speak in the order in which cards are submitted. Please fill out a blue card if you'd like to speak. Robin Raymer, forgive me if I mispronounced your last name, Robin. James Wright, and Blair Beekman. Welcome, Robin.
The Measure B funding guidelines for highway interchange projects. Currently, the main criteria for receiving funding for a highway project is readiness. Whoever submits a project first gets the funds first. I understand that Silicon Valley's motto unofficially is move fast and break things, but I'm not sure that that is appropriate for transportation projects in general, most certainly not in this case. Let me explain why. The two highway projects who have currently secured the most funding from this are the Matilda 237-101 interchange and the Charcourt Overpass project. Charcourt has secured $12 million from the VTA, which is twice as much as any of the remaining interchange projects. For those of you who are not familiar with Charcourt, it's a project across 880 in North San Jose that will introduce 4 lanes of truck traffic into a school zone. Why is the VTA funding Charcourt? According to official documents, the project is intended to, quote, address local relief circulation. Since that is so vague to basically justify anything, I asked VTA staff to clarify how much relief this project will bring and where. And their answer was, we don't know. Although the city of San Jose has secured $12 million from the VTA in funding for the project, they have not shown to the VTA how this project is beneficial to anyone except the engineers and developers building it. Why not? Because right now they don't need to. According to Measure B highway project guidelines, the submitting agencies don't need to show any benefit. They only need to rush their work and submit quickly. For traffic going through a school zone, move fast and break things is a horrible guideline. Please change it. Don't rush into something that you can't take back. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Wright.
This is James Whiteman. I came here to light rail today. There's some people cussing and saying bad words. That should not be acceptable on light rail. And also, when is BART coming down here? We don't have an update on that yet. And also, what are the October service changes going to be? And also, at some of your light rail stations, the TVs are not working. Those new TVs, and they haven't fixed them yet. And I think you guys really need to get out there and fix them, especially the ones on downtown and the one on Japantown Air. Do you know what the October service changes are going to be or not?
Thank you, Mr. Whiteman. With regard to the BART schedule, that will be discussed during the general manager's report. Patrick Griffin is here, though, can help with, I believe, the issue you just raised at the end regarding other schedule changes. Thank you very much. Okay, and Blair Beekman.
Hi, thank you. We're learning how to work with a highly controversial and questionable Republican administration at the federal level. It's been a very difficult process at this time, but I hope it has been important to learn how to work together and for the good of the country. So as California cities at this time are receiving incredibly huge sums of money from the federal government, I hope local governments of California can keep this in perspective and not be tempted by greed, demands, and quick, bad decision-making that free money from a Republican administration can bring. Here in California, it is time to acknowledge there is a good plan with good ideals currently shaping a future course for this state and possibly for this country. It is fun, hopeful, and you will know it when you hear it. As that in many instances, a progressive California standard and a good thought out logic is often more reasonable and detailed than some Republican demands of quick answers and quick profits. As we are trying to, we are at a time To finish up here, it's time to learn, among other things, I hope what Democrats in California can learn at this time is how to respect a better and learn from the everyday people of a community and how their ideas can help shape a political project and its process. This should be allowed in our democracy at this time. As we are trying to build and learn how to build out of an era of 9/11 and war, to ask what is a community sustainability, better reasoned democratic practices, and the ideas of peace is important at this time. And this is an effort that can now take place for the whole community and everybody in the community and not just the politicians. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beekman. Okay. We'll move on to item 5, which are committee reports. The Citizens Advisory Committee Chair reports in your reading folder. 5.2, the Policy Advisory Committee Chair is here, Howard Miller. Welcome, Howard.
First, I do want to report it was summer and the Policy Advisory Committee was unable to get a quorum, and that was my fault. My daughter was part of the Drum Corps International group that toured the Midwest, and for all of you, because you all have citizens that participated, Santa Clara Vanguard, which is headquartered in Santa Clara, for the first time in the history of the National Drum and Bugle Corps, they won both the World Championship and the Open Class Championship. So any of you cities that like to give commendations, you certainly could honor the Santa Clara Vanguard for being the best in the world in Drum and Bugle Corps. As for the Policy Advisory Committee, while they did not quite have a quorum, they did review a couple of the important items. You see them in there. There are only 2 points that I think are worth noting. First, there was an announcement about Highway 85. There remains a lot of interest now that we have some money to move forward with Highway 85. And apparently, even Apple has weighed in that they're willing to help on 85 and the Stevens Creek Corridor. Thank you, Savita. On Proposition 6, I think the Policy Advisory Committee felt that it was sort of a no-brainer. We have to jump out and we have to be loud and vocal and oppose this. It is not good for transportation in California to rescind that funding. And then on BART Phase 2, the relocation, which I'm glad you've pulled off of consent, there is a lot of concern about the public process, the outreach, and the money to help compensate businesses that would be negatively impacted. And we don't know how the whole process would work, but there was a recommendation that perhaps we bring in a consultant just to focus on that issue. We don't want a repeat of any of the other past projects where the businesses were so horrifically impacted and we did not have a way to address that and compensate them. So let's plan that one up front. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Howard. Okay, there are no Policy Advisory Board reports, so we'll move to 5.4. Our Ad Hoc Financial Stability Committee Chair, Jeannie Bruins, will provide the report.
Thank you, Chair. As I previously reported, the committee has seen information from staff and outside consultants on a range of topics related to the financial picture now as well as into the future. The workshop session we held on in June helped to clarify those potential approaches that might address our problem on the short-term basis. August 15th, our last meeting, staff presented some recommendations for addressing the structural deficit. These were based on the outcome from the workshops, plus additional information and other ideas that may have come in, including from the 3 members of the committee. The highlights were that the adjustments to the service hours projected to meet the new service plan, equitable employee contributions toward pension, use.
I'm not going to allow outbursts. If you're going to be yelling in any way interfering with the proceedings, I'm going to ask that you leave. Thank you. Thank you, Director Bruins.
Okay, and the use of SB 1 revenues and early retirement options. These suggestions met the test of being within VTA's ability to adopt some subject to collective bargaining and effective within a short time frame. These options were represented some common themes that came out of our discussions, but by no means did it reflect a consensus of choice. We also received letters at that meeting from Working Partners and Spur that are both thoughtful and clearly designed to help provide the best service possible for our clients, while at the same time considering our financial challenges. The ideas that were expressed will certainly inform the committee's and ultimately the board's decision as we move forward. The committee and stakeholders discussed these and other potentials without coming to a resolution at this time, which is why we are not bringing a recommendation to the board. However, because of the outcome of the November ballot on Proposition 6, we will have a major impact. The outcome of that will have a major impact on what our actual financial position is. So as the chair, I am recommending that we pause our deliberations until after the election takes place. One of the most frustrating things working on this committee that I think all of us, the stakeholders and the members alike, is this unknown, because that is a major amount of revenue, and it really changes the complexion of this. So I think if we can postpone our deliberations until after that, it will give us a much more accurate picture of our revenues and expenses going forward. So that is what I am recommending.
Thank you, Director Bruins. I believe we don't need a motion. Is that correct? That's simply a suggestion, and thank you. Okay. Is there any comment from any members of the board? All right, we'll move forward. Thank you for the report. We're now on to the consent agenda. Are there any items first to pull from consent? This member McAllister?
613, please.
Director McAllister, 613.
616.
616. Director Chavez. Director Camus, did you have your hand up? Nope. Okay. I'd like to recuse myself from items 6.6, 6.7, 6.9, and 6.10. Now, that means consent is now composed of items 6.1 through 12, and 6.14 and 6.15, and we'll hear the other items. So is there a motion on these remaining consent items? Oh, is there cards? I see. Oh, thank you very much. Just see them now. Thank you very much, Mr. LeBrun. Come on up. Thank you. And, oh, wait. Yep, that's on 6:15. And Monica Mallon, also on 6:15, I believe. Welcome. 6:15, for the record, is a report on service changes for October.
Right. Thank you. So I missed, I believe it was the ANF. It was added at the last minute. I was in Sacramento. I'm sure you didn't miss me. So it was added at the last minute, and then you put it on consent. There never was any discussion. And the thing that concerns me is the changes to the 181 service. And the 180, I don't use it. And there really are no issues. I wish we'd done that right at the beginning when we opened the Warm Springs extension. So basically, instead of going to Fremont, we're going to go to Warm Springs, so you go to downtown. I'm very happy with that. We're saving $2 million a year. It's wonderful. The thing that concerns me is that if you look at this map in the attachment, it says that at late night and weekend, something very strange happens, whereby we still pick up people at Warm Springs, but we're not going downtown anymore. We're going to go and dump people at the Milpitas Center, which I guess that's okay. Instead of now taking the 181 straight to downtown, I get to take the light rail to Santa Teresa, which quite frankly is absolutely no use to me whatsoever. So if we could get some kind of clarification what's going here, because I'm just going to have to give a BART if I have to come back late from San Francisco. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Monica Mallon. Hi, welcome.
Hi, I'm a student assistant at San Jose State, and I just wanted to comment on some of the concerns that we've received from students and faculty members about the service changes with the 181 Express. Most of the 1,300 students that ride that route on a daily basis to get to campus are not connecting from BART. They're coming from Fremont directly to campus. And
Monica, could I ask you to step in a little bit to the
yeah.
mic just to make sure we hear you?
Yeah,
Thank you.
so most of these students are not connecting from BART. They're coming directly from Fremont to SJSU, so these service changes would make it a lot more difficult for those students and faculty members to get to campus. They would have to most likely take BART only one stop and then transfer to the 181 from there, which might be a little bit difficult for us to get them to do, especially since a lot of people are hesitant to take transit in the first place. So just want to ask that you consider holding off on the changes until BART opens in Berryessa. Thank you.
Monica, I think Jim Unitas is here. Is that right? Jim, would you mind just having a brief conversation about the schedule changes with Monica? Thank you very much. Mr. Beekman, you want to speak about 6.3, which is relating to the opposition to Prop 6. Is that right? Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you. I was hoping to speak of the highway bill itself a bit and Jim Beal's participation in it. And when this first came out, I guess a few years ago, it came into San Jose, and there was a lot of debate about it. And it really taught me at that time, I don't have the depth, but at my level, I tried to learn important lessons that it was the beginning of a new administration, and it was important that as California and as San Jose and as the County of Santa Clara, it was important to set good standards for how we receive the sort of money from this transportation bill and how we use it and just the practices involved. It was an important lesson, important beginning lesson for me. And I guess it's a place and a time to thank you, and I hope that the VTA can really respect that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, on the motion to approve the consent agenda, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, Director McAllister, you like to speak on item 6.13?
Yeah. It came in front of the CMPP, and I thought it was a very important item that the whole board should be aware of this. This sort of the Transportation Technology Strategy Plan is sort of, to me, one of the foundations of where VTA is going to the future. You have the 2040 plan, you have the strategic plan, and I believe this is one of the very important transportation technology strategy plans. And since it was only really presented to the CMPP, I felt it was important that we shed light on this for the whole board to take a look at, because this is where technology and the cities need to work together, or where technology is going to drive cities when they start implementing any kind of construction project, or either it's fiber, or it's optics, or it's new signaling, so that the vehicles in the area will be able to be connected, so that we make streamlined transportation. Data is gathered so that we can make more intelligent decisions, and it's the future. And we need to start looking at we need to start doing it now. And so I've asked staff if they could do a presentation, and they're willing to do it. But this is why I brought it to everybody's attention.
Okay. Before we go to staff, any other comments before we go to staff presentation? Okay, let's do that. Hi, Chris.
Good evening, everyone. So thank you, John, for those comments. We do have a brief presentation to give you some highlights about this plan. I would like to, just as an introduction, just outline the process. This was an 18-month process, roughly. It was a very high-level but inclusive look at emerging technologies and how they apply to transportation. It was it involved a very robust outreach process, which included all of our member agencies, all of the agencies that affect us or touch us in some way, as well as the private sector. And it's really an update to planning that we've done in the past, and it is designed to integrate with all of our other planning studies, including our strategic plan and our long-range transportation plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to David Kobayashi for a short presentation.
Can you hear me?
Sure. Yes.
Good evening. I'm pleased to present the Santa Clara County Transportation Technology Strategic Plan. Let me turn the slide here. So this was originally, we originally had an intelligent transportation plan from years ago. It was maybe a little bit over 10 years ago when we did the last plan. And it was one of our guidance for how to implement and deploy technology. It was used also to feed into the Valley Transportation plan process also. But this is a complete reimagining of the plan and a higher look and as a living document. And the key thing of what we're trying to do is to embrace technology to manage congestion and maximize the existing infrastructure. And as Chris alluded to, it was a collaborative process with multiple stakeholders and experts. It took about a year and a half to develop. So the goal of the plan, to provide a coherent framework to create a sustainable and countywide smart transportation region. That was the point of this whole plan. It is consistent with the VTA strategic plan. It is consistent with the VTA strategic plan and VTA to create, collaborate, and lead. And as you can see, the goals are all very consistent with what I was saying about managing congestion, maximizing the existing infrastructure, and innovating. So what is the framework? The framework includes 4 focus areas. Those 4 focus areas are arterial management, transit management, freeway, and smart mobility, which is all inclusive of all the alternative modes like bike, ped. It includes the scooters, the dockless bikes, share bikes, and those and that. So, and then in terms of what was the guidance for this whole document, as you can see on the side, there are 4 different areas that we looked at in terms of guidance: updating, revolutionizing the infrastructure, embracing technology, sharing and using information, and then interfacing with the end user, meaning the traveler. This was a collaborative effort. We tried to outreach to as many stakeholders and experts as you can, what at a high level we can do to prepare to be in the 21st century. We met with the ITS working group, which is a subset of the TAC. We met with the private sector. We met with regional partners, Caltrans, and MTC and FHWA. And we also met with nonprofit innovative organizations like Spur, Prospect Silicon Valley, and Transform. It was a series of meetings, and this is what we came up in terms of it. There are 5 recommendations how we can be better prepared for the future, upcoming future and in the near future. Those recommendations are to create a data sharing environment. That is important to make sure that we're interoperable. We need to establish a new mobility services program. That is important because of all these new disruptive things that are going on, like the transportation network providers like Uber and Lyft, the scooters, the bike shares. We need to try to best how to incorporate all those things to work with our existing transportation systems. The next recommendation is to improve regional communication. We have a lot of communication infrastructure out there, but the main reason to improve it is we need to make sure it's fast and reliable. Our end users, the travelers, expect information in real time, so we need something that's fast and reliable. Our existing transportation systems, to be frank, they are pretty old. Their technologies are not capable of sharing easily with the new technologies that are out there today. And then finally, the final recommendation is to have an interface between the private sector and the public sector. And the key point is to create some, because the private sector is becoming more and more involved in providing transportation solutions, we need to make sure that whatever we come up with serves the end user, meaning the traveler. So what's next? This is not the end of this plan. This is just a high-level framework. And so what we need to do is to start fleshing out the plan. And so we need to start having one-on-one meetings with our stakeholders. Identify a couple items that we carry forward to delve further. Focus on near-term recommendations, and then continue the dialogue between the private sector and public sector. As we develop the plan and as we're going with the next steps, we would be coming back to this, to the board and to the committees, whatever comes out from this effort moving forward. That concludes our presentation.
Thanks, David. Anything further, Chris?
I'd like to add one thing, two things actually. One is just to reiterate that this is a living document. This is not something that we plan on having to sit on a shelf. This is something that will take on a life of its own, and we all know that technology is changing and adapting and evolving so quickly. We really need to have a plan like this so we can keep ahead of the power curve. That's why one of the reasons why we did this was to keep ahead of the power curve. So you will be hearing about this and these ideas that have been shared in the plan in the months and years going forward. This is the beginning of a whole new sort of paradigm we're moving into regarding transportation technologies. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Director McAllister, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, staff, for bringing this up. Just to give an example, Mountain View just on Tuesday authorized $350,000 for their comprehensive modal program for the city. And we are taking this new technology and incorporating it into our programs as we move forward, because we want to make sure that we're connected with the other cities surrounding us and make things much efficient. We're also we've been talking about light rail, and if we have signalized signals along the line that are communicated, because there's 4 cities and everybody has their own particular technology, this way we'll have a comprehensive technology that will advance and improve our transit system. So I just want to throw those comments in, and thank you for allowing us to talk about it.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Beekman.
Sorry about that. Thank you. This was talked about all last month during the committee meeting process. It's going to be a long process with this. So thank you. I was, intrigued by the idea from, I guess maybe it was the board meeting in August. It was talked about automated driving things. I don't know if that was June or August. And it was suggested by Cindy Chavez that to bring the union on board, one of the unions, to look into how they can be a part of the automated driving system process. And I thought it was a great idea. And it seemed like it's time to come. Would they want to be involved in this more as a stakeholder? I think it would help. It doesn't have to be anything serious, but just to introduce them and for them to be a part of the process, I think can be important. Another idea is that I've been working a lot on to be around the ideas of accountability with technology that the County of Santa Clara is working on, and that in fact Supervisor Chavez is a part of the committee that works on it. And it's just really interesting work, and she's offered her own interesting ideas that I could hear from, it's from her from this work, I think, a bit. It's really impressive stuff, and I hope it can really be included, its organization and guidelines to help understand how we use technology within the community. And I think it has a really important place in how you guys are going to work in the next several years. So. It's how I'm talking and speaking about subjects these days, so thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, are there any other comments from the board? I'm going to ask for a motion, not just on 6.13, but once again from 6.1 all the way to 6.15, because I'm told that either I jumped ahead or we didn't get the motion in second that we all voted on. So we're going to revote on the consent calendar from 6.1 to 6.15. My recusals remain the same.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Dr. Chavez. All right, and a second from Director Camus. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we mean it this time. Now, 6.16, Director Chavez.
Thank you. I wanted to thank Howard for his report. And on this item, you may recall that or maybe you don't know this, Councilmember Carrasco had recommended that we take some action to lay the groundwork for really investigating what the impacts of the BART alignment will be. And so I know on this item, what I wanted to ask was both to move it, but to add to it that the staff look at hiring consultants to assist businesses who need to get their books in order before they get evaluated. And then second, that that there be a more distinct set of policies or approaches for businesses that may be impacted by the BART alignment. So I'd like to include those, and then I can speak to that if I could get I'll make the motion if I can get a second on that. Oh, I don't need it, okay. So, well, then how do I get people to do this? Be very forceful in my speaking? Okay, I am going to make a referral. Well, let me just say what my goal is for my colleagues. When, in the past, when I served on the city council and we had to do a seismic retrofitting to a whole bunch of businesses, and they were of every kind of business, some that were really sophisticated, that had a really sophisticated back of house, and others like key shops that were keeping their receipts on paper. And when we came in to do the evaluation to look at impact, especially for relocation, you know, people were pulling shoe boxes out or having to go. I mean, it was a challenge. So what we did is we provided some technical assistance to folks who needed support, making sure their books were in order before they engaged with us in a more formal way. So what I'd like to do is ask staff to include that as part of their planning. And then if staff could let us know, really this is more of an information, it really is an information request, like does it make sense for us to do this? How much would it cost? Under what terms and conditions should we pursue it? That would be my request. I didn't realize it was just an informational item, but thank you.
Okay, so that's a referral to staff, and administration will consider that. I just have a question. Is there benefit in us, if this work has already been done through this relocation plan, great. But have we clearly identified who all the impacted businesses are? Is that already, can we say we've been exhaustive in that regard? Ron?
There is a presentation on this, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And the short answer is yes.
Great.
Within the environmental document.
Okay, wonderful. Ron, did you want to add anything?
No, I think Jim provided the answer.
Great, thanks, Jim. Okay, other comments? Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to add to that, and I know that the San Jose Downtown Association provided a letter, copied it to myself, the mayor, and to Nuria as well. And I would just want to encourage our staff as well in regards to, I would also, I guess, maybe answer to Ron's just answer there. We don't actually know all the businesses that may be impacted. We do know property-wise, but what Downtown Association was elevating, what I think our Vice Mayor San Jose was elevating, is the impact to some of the businesses that may not actually be a property that's impacted, but they're along the route and they may be along the construction route. And so a potential business interruption fund may be necessary. We don't know that, though, until we can kind of analyze where the impacts may be. And the letter that came in from the Downtown Association, and I think, Nuria, you've seen that, or I know staff has seen it as well, in regards to initially just getting actually a contractor, so similar to what Cindy was just saying, getting a contractor to look at what the impacts may be, because they may not be significant. And actually, in fact, a lot of our businesses, and specifically the Downtown Association, recognize now, and hence why they were lobbying heavily for single bore, recognize that the impacts are much different, right, with single bore than they would have been with twin bore. So I think everybody's feeling comfortable at the moment with what the impacts may be, especially since they'll be minimized. But it is important that we look at and prepare for that, and that we have a good analysis on what the impacts may be, so we can have an answer for those businesses when we know inevitably some will be coming forward, much like we saw on the BRT line along Alum Rock and East Santa Clara.
Thank you, Nuria.
Mr. Chair, if I may, and this is such an important topic because we've had experience with other construction projects that were much more minimal or nominal in terms of the impact that we will be seeing with BART. But given that we're at this early stage, the work that the outreach staff is doing right now, working with each of the communities and as part of this relocation program, I think is going to help us begin to identify the businesses that are within the alignment. Our consultants will be doing further design on the project, on the tunneling project. So therefore, we'll have a much better understanding on the depth and the influence zone of that tunneling activity. So these early informations that you all are sharing with us are going to help inform the recommendation that we'll be bringing to the board. I think that we're still a little early, but it's important, and we have so noted all of the letters and requests that we have been receiving both verbally and in writing. But I just ask that you give us an opportunity so that we are accurate when we are coming to you with a recommendation and we have a better understanding of the influence and impact of the construction operation.
Thank you, Nuria. Okay, we have two members of the community who'd like to speak, Francis Herbert and Ross Lyon.
Mayor, if I may, are we going to get a presentation? Can we get?
I'm sorry, were you about to present something, Jim? Or, no.
It's okay.
Not yet.
I thought the presentation was later. in the
I
agenda.
understood that we had removed this item from consent under orders of the day, that it was scheduled for a presentation after the regular orders.
Right.
You know what? You're right about that.
Once this
And I called it anyway.
Yes.
All right, so that's my goof.
But you know what? I didn't pull it off for the whole presentation. I just wanted to give input to it.
Okay.
So I'm not
Well,
asking.
we're here now, so why don't we do this? So perhaps we could hear the presentation. Francis, if you wouldn't mind just taking a moment, and then we'll hear the presentation, and we'll go to public comment. And I pulled it, so let's do it.
Okay, fair enough. Good afternoon, Ron Golem, Deputy Director for Real Estate and Joint Development. Sitting to my left is Kathy Bradley, who's VTA's Manager for Real Estate. Our consultant, who's our technical expert in transit, that's Karen Edelman, who's with ARWS. So Kathy and I will go through the presentation, but bear with us because if the questions become very technical, we may have to wait for Karen to help us answer them. So with that, actually, let me just frame this before I turn it over to Kathy. So with the board's selection of the alignment and the configuration of BART Phase 2 and the adoption of the environmental document and the receipt of the FTA's record of decision, we are now moving on to implementation with the project. With regards to real estate, one of the requirements before we can acquire any real estate is that the board adopt a relocation plan that addresses the impacts to property owners, businesses, and residents for the property we need to acquire for the project. As we know from our experience with BART Phase 1, any major transportation project requires the acquisition of property, and it is inevitable that there will be a certain number of businesses and residents that do need to be relocated. We have a legal obligation to both understand and address those impacts, and we have a duty to do that in a way that maximizes or minimizes the impacts to folks. And so this is an information item. I will turn it over to Kathy to talk about how we've developed the relocation plan, the process that we're going through now.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So today we're going to give you a brief overview of relocation planning for the BART Phase 2 project. So first of all, this slide provides an overview of where relocation planning falls within the larger real estate planning process. As you know, we have received environmental clearance first from the board in April and then from the FTA in June. And so right now we are in the preliminary engineering and testing stage to inform the project design. Concurrently, we are engaging in relocation planning and have a draft relocation plan out for circulation and public comment from August 17 to September 17. And so at the end of this circulation period, we will come back to the board with a final relocation plan for consideration and adoption in December. And only after the board adopts a relocation plan pursuant to California law will we engage in the first stage of acquisitions in early 2019. So far in the relocation planning process, we have engaged with property owners and occupants and provided them with project information as well as information about VTA's Relocation Assistance Program. The initial outreach was through a general information notice, and that was via certified mail, and it was followed up with phone calls and meetings. And it's really a continuing communication process to learn more about the needs of these potentially impacted parties and to provide additional information as it arises. At the same time, the team has been conducting market research to look for potential relocation sites for both businesses and residents, because the goal is, as much as possible, to keep them in the same market and locality. In terms of community engagement, we have been engaging with both the community and stakeholders. We've brought this presentation to and have made ourselves available to VTA's standing committees, advisory committees, and we will be taking this to 3 community working groups next week that are set up specifically to provide public feedback on the Phase 2 project. Okay, and so during these public presentations, we will be giving information about our relocation planning process and obtaining feedback on the draft relocation plan. And with that, I will hand over the next slide to Ms. Karen Edelman, who is our consultant, and she just arrived, just in the nick of time, right?
Good evening. One of the benefits we had in forming the relocation planning document was meeting with businesses and occupants, residential occupants and business occupants in the project area. We were able to describe to them what the VTA's Relocation Assistance Program was, and that included relocation advisory assistance, assistance with moving costs, assistance with business reestablishment costs, and for residential occupants, assistance with the difference in rent for 42 months. So we were very glad that we were able to meet with them and explain the program and answer any questions that they had. Altogether, there are 9 residential occupants that may be impacted by the project, as many as 47 business occupants, and 4 occupants with personal property only, which means they don't qualify as either owners, business owners or residential occupants. Right now, the draft relocation plan is out for public review and comment, and that comment period ends September 17th. And we are open to have conversations with folks or take information and comments in writing.
And then to sum up, after we go through the comment period and after we digest the comments and respond to them, we will be coming back to the board in December to ask the board to adopt the relocation plan. That concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Okay, we now have 2 members of the community who would like to speak. Francis Herbert, followed by Ross Lyon.
I'm Francis Herbert, Chief of Staff for Vice Mayor Carrasco. I just wanted to reiterate...
Actually, Francis, could you step to the other mic?
Oh.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, that's fancy over here.
Yeah, it's cool.
To reiterate the comments from Vice Mayor Carrasco's office and that were outlined in her letter, that we do believe that there's a loss of business when businesses are relocated and that VTA should take that into account as part of the relocation plan. We hope that we do encourage the relocation to be within the area. We don't want further displacement of small businesses, especially along our corridor, as we've already seen with the BRT project, and that we hope that the outreach to our small businesses is culturally sensitive, and not just in multilingual, but culturally sensitive to some of these ethnic businesses along the corridor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ross?
Yeah, hi, my name is Ross Lyon. I'm representing my family who owns property at 664 Stockton Avenue and 656 Stockton Avenue. That property has been in our family since 1920. It's kind of what my dad and his sister and his brother, who was a teacher in San Jose for 30 years at Pioneer and Leland, what they kind of like planned their whole life to survive on with their retirement. And this out of the blue comes to us that possibly that land is going under eminent domain for the Stockton Avenue vent, and it's kind of devastating to our family, so I thought I'd come in and kind of give a face to what's happening on our side. There's 11 businesses actually that have been on that property for some of them as long as 14 years and 3 of them for 27 years. When the eminent domain proposal also in some of the writing says that they're going to turn part of it into retail following the development of the vent, That's also disturbing because what is eminent domain for? It's for public policy, not for turning things into retail. And that would affect us, and we'd want to kind of be involved in that process, hopefully. The original plans indicated 3 locations along Stockton Avenue, and most recently we saw that there's only 2. And maybe Ron can elaborate at some point as to why they dropped off. One of them, it looked like it was a Mako painting facility, which also doesn't seem like you'd want a painting facility as that Stockton Avenue corridor gets more residential. And finally, I don't know why we got selected. We're a small organization. Our family's dependent on it. And why wouldn't you select a corporation that could absorb that kind of eminent domain taking? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. I ask as you leave if you could do so in a way that enables us to continue with the meeting. Thank you. And thank you for joining us. Okay, are there other comments? Director Nathan?
Thank you, Chair Liccardo. My question was for staff, and this came to us in the CMPP committee meeting. And at that point, I asked if the staff had contacted a business, and I came to know that staff did contact along with real estate as well as legal counsel. My question is there a time between now and December that this will come back to committee and we'll know what the discussions were, or will it only come back to the board in December?
The purpose of the relocation plan is to assess the potential impacts and describe how we will address those impacts through the relocation assistance program. So that is the scope of this effort. I think what you're alluding to is discussions we've had with one tenant. We've had this with other businesses too, which is that as we've looked at doing the planning, we've identified in the environmental document the maximum potential impact, and that's what's the subject of this plan. As the work for the project continues and as the engineering work advances, we continue to look at ways to refine the project to the extent that we can find ways of accomplishing the project without needing that maximum potential property identified in the EIR. We will do that, but that's not an effort that will be completed by December. That's an effort that will be going on through 2019 and into 2020.
Thank you for the clarification.
Director Chavez?
Thank you. That just prompts, I want to make sure I understood what you just said. So we're looking at the broadest scope right now.
Right, the maximum potential impact in terms of number of properties that might be affected.
And as part of the communication process with folks, we're also having a conversation with them about the reason that their properties may be at risk of eminent domain or relocation or any of those things. And what I'm struck by is the comment that was just made by the speaker. I think that there are a lot of discussions that go in relative to design and why we end up in a place that we're in, on these alignments. Is that something that we also discuss with the folks that may be impacted?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we've talked to several folks that have concerns about why their property, and so in the course of getting to that discussions, we do explain why the properties were selected, why the environmental process we went through, how to evaluate these factors, and why we are at those properties. A lot of those discussions have been in the context of folks saying, well, gee, can't we reconsider the alignment or kind of go in a different way? And we have to explain the projects kind of move beyond that point. But we do provide information as best we can at this point about kind of how we got to this point. But again, I think so everyone is clear, the engineering work progresses, and so the project is not static. The project continues to evolve and be refined as we continue our work.
And one other just thought, as part of this process, what is the mechanism we use for ongoing communication? Because your point is a really good one, that we're working with another agency. There's not a lot there, but there are some moving parts to it. So what's the ongoing communication strategy going to be, or is that something that will come back to us also?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm going to ask Brandy Childress to address that because she's working very closely with the real estate group on the whole outreach and communication.
Good evening, board members. To address that question, as part of the process that we're working with Ron Gollum and our consultant on this, we are hand in hand with them when it comes to going up and down the corridor right now, talking to impacted properties. But to the earlier point about what the scope of the business impacts are going to be, that's part of what my team is doing with all the stakeholder intake that's happening related to businesses, to residents. This is all part of the construction education and outreach plan that is part of the environmental document. So it's an ongoing process. We are intaking stakeholders, reaching out to them face to face through emails. I mean, we're really trying to get in front of all of this. And with the draft relocation plan work and even the field work that's coming up here in the next couple of months, we are out there in the corridor trying to get as many people aware of the work as possible.
You know, the only one thought I have is that I do feel like starting out with a very consistent place that people can go, you know, whether that's a website or a phone number or all of the above,
Yep.
so that if at any point in time they want to go get an update on where we're at, that there's something really honed toward them, not just the broad public, would be great.
We absolutely have done that. Our first initial stab at this was a postcard that went out to 60,000 people to say, BART is coming, here's how you can stay engaged, and it's been growing our list ever since. And, you know, in a few months, we'll be out there with our field office. I mean, we're really trying to be ingrained in the community as much as possible.
Okay. Other questions or comments? All right, we'll entertain a motion on this item.
Information item.
Information only. Drat. Okay. Then we're done with the consent calendar. We're going to go on to the regular agenda. Thanks, everybody. Item 7.1 is to adopt a resolution authorizing the refunding of all or a portion of the maturities of the 1976 sales tax 2008 bonds, approving the transaction documents on file with the board secretary, and authorizing the general manager and chief financial officer to individually take all actions necessary to issue the 1976 sales tax revenue refunding bonds, 2018 Series A bonds, terminate the interest rate swaps, and pay issuance costs. Whew. Okay. Raj and Michael, take it away.
Good evening. Raj Srinath, Chief Financial Officer with VTA. To my left is Michael Smith, who's a manager in the finance group. Mike is going to provide the highlights of the proposed refinancing of the refunding of the 2008 bonds. With that, let me turn it over to Mike.
I think you got it all right, though. So,
thank you.
So this action would would authorize the refunding of the 2008 bonds that are issued under the 1976 sales tax, and authorize the termination of the related interest rate swaps as well. We'll replace the variable rate bonds with fixed rate bonds, eliminating risk of both the variable interest rate not matching the swap interest rate that we receive. It will also eliminate the remarketing agents and the liquidity bank associated with that. And we can do this under current market conditions and still generate, we can cover all the costs and generate about $600,000 of savings, we hope. We'll find out for sure next week when we price the bonds if we're authorized.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, questions? I had a couple questions. I understand this ordinarily would not qualify under the standard threshold you would have just for the purpose of savings. The present value savings are about $1 million, we think, which is under the 3% threshold by quite a bit. But you're doing this, it sounds like, really for stability and certainty. You're avoiding the variable rate.
Yeah, it's simplification of the debt portfolio or elimination of risk, however you want to look at it.
Fair enough. And so my question is, I know that all of this is based on assumptions, and I'm just wondering, in the worst case, I know for a standard set of assumptions, we think they're about $1 million in present value savings. What's the worst case scenario?
Well, market conditions, this refunding is dependent not on quite just the level of interest rates, but it's the differential between taxable and tax-exempt rates, because the swaps are taxable. So we've been operating for the last month or so in a slightly advantageous market where the differential between those two rates has been larger than typical. So it's enabled us to pursue this, and from the time that I wrote the report in late July, the savings were about $1.2 million at a high point, and we're down to $650,000 today. We hope that they'll last another 7 days till we get to the pricing and we can lock things in.
Okay. But I guess, is that assuming the most conservative assumptions?
Those are conservative assumptions.
Okay.
We're using our existing, because you're right, we project forward
Yeah.
To assumed costs for the liquidity that we're going to be purchasing in the future. Sometimes people bump that number up and assume that it's going to be higher. We're using what's currently a very favorable rate of about 33 basis points for our liquidity, and just assuming that that's what we have for the rest of time. Same with any of our other costs.
Okay.
So we've been very conservative.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, other questions? Wonderful. Is there a motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. We're on to 7.2, which is to authorize general manager to issue a competitive developer RFP for the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority Cerrone Joint Development Site. The solicitation will seek a proposal to design, finance, build, and operate a commercial development consistent with the City of San Jose's general plan pursuant to a long-term ground lease. Ron is back.
I am back.
Welcome back.
Okay. So this project is about this request for an RFP is about the Cerrone site. This is one of our identified joint development site. Just to give you an overview, the site itself is about 120 acres. The uses we have on the site is a bus yard. It's adjacent to Coyote Creek, so we have floodplain habitat areas, and we have a significant amount of undeveloped land with frontage on State Route 237 and Zanker Road. We believe from the analysis of our needs that we have approximately 40 acres that have frontage on 237 and Zanker that are not needed for long-term VTA use and are available for development. And the framework for considering what can happen to the property is, of course, the City of San Jose's general plan. The general plan identifies a portion of property for combined industrial commercial and another portion for industrial park. City staff in our discussions with them has been clear that this is a major employment site, and they see the most appropriate use of this property being for employment generating uses. Just to give you an orientation of the site, you can see 237 is at the top of the image and Zanker Road is to the left. You can see to the right side of the site is our large current Cerrone bus yard. The area that's identified in yellow is approximately 40 acres or so that we believe will be available for development. Now, just to answer, I think, an obvious question here, you can see that we are using some portion of that area for parking and some other activities. The way that we would approach development is that those activities could actually be relocated to sort of the south and eastern portion of the site. And so this yellow area is kind of the maximum potential area, but actually this yellow area will be shrunk in a final project to allow us to accommodate both current uses and our long-term needs. So in terms of the opportunity, what's prompting us to proceed right now is that we have received recently an unsolicited developer proposal to create a creative industrial complex campus. And the components of that would be creative industrial. And by creative industrial, we mean industrial space that has a higher amount of office space that's really targeted at tech companies and sort of the whole R&D and prototyping and kind of fast production industrial. That would be nearly 500,000 square feet of space. Another component that they were proposing is approximately 136,000 square feet of creative office space. And then finally, the 5-acre site at the corner of Zanker and 237, which is obviously the prime location, would be reserved as flex commercial for a future use that would be determined as to how the project evolves and what the demand is. And so this is a program that's proposed that they envision happening over several phases. We thought this had a lot of potential. We asked our consultant to evaluate both the near-term market potential for this product type as well as the alternative product that would be creation or trying to create more of a Class A office type of project, so more mid-rise offices, retail, that sort of thing. And what the consultant study told us is that there is demand in the market and there is support for the project being proposed by the developer. If we were to wait for a more Class A office, retail, that type of mixed-use project, that will be a long-term proposition. The market is not going to support that at present, so we might be waiting, anywhere from 5 to 7 years or longer. And so from staff's perspective, given that this proposal suggests the idea that there could be substantial revenue generation, and given our needs, we think that it presents a great opportunity for near-term revenue generation, and that is why we are making the recommendation to proceed with an RFP. Now, to be clear, the way the RFP process works is that if we are authorized by the board to release an RFP, this will be an open RFP, so we'll be asking for all proposals that are consistent with the City of San Jose's land use designations. And so that could be the type of proposal that we receive from the developer. It could be other types of projects as well. And as you know, we would be going through a process to evaluate what proposals come in and present our recommendation to the board, which retains the ongoing responsibility to make a decision about whether they would want to proceed with any of the proposals received, select one of them, or not accept any of them, or go in a different direction. Let me just say, too, to let you know that, while we're proposing going with an RFP, there's a lot of staff work that's going on right now. And some of the staff work does relate to the Cerrone Yard. So we have a long-term facilities master plan. We had updated it to look in 2016 to look at what our long-term needs would be for the Cerrone Yard at that time when we were thinking about joint development. We are currently working with operations and other staff to update that long-term facilities need, and that's an important piece for us because as we look at going forward with the project, we do want to make sure that we have accommodated what our long-term needs will be at the Cerrone Yard as our service needs change, as technology changes, all of those considerations as part of the project. Let me also say that in terms of the project, that as part of our joint development program, we're also thinking about opportunities to enhance transit service to this location, leverage the fact that we have a bus yard to create additional bus stops and transit service, so as we go with joint development, we are actually reducing the number of car trips and vehicle miles traveled and so on that would be associated with any development project. And then finally, I should note that, obviously one of the goals of joint development, the number one goals identified by the board is revenue generation. If we proceed with the RFP, and if we get acceptable proposals, and if the board decides to proceed with one of those proposals and it leads to a project, all the monies that come from any joint development project goes into the joint development fund, and it's up to the board's discretion as to how those joint development funds are expended. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Yes, Vice Chair?
Yes, so I just wanted, so we are talking a ground lease here?
Yeah, pursuant to our policy for ground lease, what we'd be offering is a long-term ground lease opportunity.
Like, 40 years or something like that? Or?
Typically, when you're talking about a long-term ground lease, for them to be financeable, you're talking about a 60-year term at a minimum.
Okay, great, thank you.
Camus?
Yeah, I also want to appreciate the fact that what you're looking at is something that already fits within our zoning guidelines. What I heard earlier was housing, and this was industrial land, and I want to thank you for making sure that we don't have that battle. So I don't know if you need a motion, or is this an information item? Or
no, we need motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay, I just have one question for you, Ron. So I understand there'll be an RFP, responsive bids, and so if some developer comes along and says, I want fee title, I'm willing to pay more than the net present value of all these leases that are being offered, is that a non-responsive bid?
When we do the evaluation, we have criteria that's set forth in the RFP, and so the criteria basically is based on our joint development policy and objectives for doing a ground lease. What we do is we look at the totality of the offers. So to answer a little bit differently, if we had a scenario where we had similar offers and one offer was for a sale only, but it was similar in all other respects to the offers of proposed ground leases, in the evaluation process, we would probably not recommend advancing that. On the other hand, if someone came in and said, gee, I will give you 50% more than anybody else because we're going to do this on a purchase basis, I think from a staff perspective, we would feel obliged to inform the board of that, so the board's aware of that as being something, the material that might want to be considered.
Okay, I just want to make sure we can actually consider it, because I know we've had some conversations about this in the past, and there are various schools of thought about whether or not development community will happily jump into a ground lease with a governmental entity. And so I know it happens in some cities and doesn't happen in others, and I just want to make sure our options are open if we really get a good deal.
Right, but I think to be clear, when we talk to developers, we do convey that the board's adopted policy per the joint development policy is that we are looking to do long-term ground leases. But as you know, developers are not necessarily constrained by the framework they give you. Being entrepreneurial, they will put forward the proposal they think is most compelling.
What a nice way to put it, Ron. All right, so Director Chavez?
I really appreciate you raising that, because I'm the one that's always saying don't sell, don't sell, don't sell, because I feel like long-term, it's the way I feel about myself and predecessors of mine in San Jose. Like some of the land that we sold, at the time we sold it, frankly, Santa Clara didn't. And look at that little smile, even now. Holding in the, but one thing that I just wanted to ask if you all would consider as you're going through this process, it would be interesting to take a look at some of the other transportation agencies and the deals they have on their properties. And I appreciate, Mayor, the point you raised that San Jose is a different city, so I know in some instances this may be an apples and oranges case, but it's intriguing to me to look at how deals are structured around the Bay and what we're learning about those deals, because I think there are a lot of agencies now that are holding land and using this, using a land lease opportunity, and they're looking at, some of them are very creative.
Sure. I think it's a great point. I have an informal collaboration with my counterparts at BART, Caltrain, San Francisco, MTA, as well as Metro Los Angeles. And so at a professional level, we have an ongoing collaboration discussion on a range of these ideas, and we've talked about this topic. All of our agencies are pursuing ground leases as a preferred strategy for the reason that when you do the financial analysis, you do have greater long-term revenues to the agency from a ground lease than you would from a sale of the property. But we do talk about that. In fact, I was talking with one of my colleagues recently about exactly this topic about, when you try to structure these deals, there is a pretty large set of tools, and it's not that those tools, that there are sort of secrets or folks don't know. A lot of it is really how you tailor the use of the tools to the particular project, the uses, and the outcomes you're trying to get to. But you are absolutely correct that I think there is a lot to be learned from thinking about how other agencies do that, and we do have that conversation on an ongoing basis.
And I guess even the other thing is, and I appreciate that you're doing that. It may even be of benefit at some point to think about this a little 101 with us relative, because some of this is so different because of the type of agency we are versus what it's like to be in a city or a county necessarily. But it also occurs to me that I'm sure you learn a lot about mistakes that we've all made. And even that's of some benefit, because one thing that I'm intrigued with is that we have a lot of tools, but I don't know that we're always thinking about how to use multiple tools and in one location. And to me, there have been a handful of people that I've seen really be able to negotiate deals that I think have a great rate of return for the organization they're from, but also you can see the kind of wisdom in them long term. And I would just, not to pick on Santa Clara, but I do think Santa Clara has done some really smart things, and they've been doing this longer in terms of ground leases versus sale, that there may be a way to, even locally, for us to benefit a little bit from learning.
Okay. No, I think that's a great point. And we are actually talking to Santa Clara staff in the context of our Santa Clara Caltrain negotiation going on. I think you know me, and to the extent the board is interested in hearing it, I'm more than happy to come back and provide additional background and detail.
Thank you. Roland Lebrun.
Thank you. So the first thing I'd like to do is to thank the VTA for being open and giving us a diagram and showing us, this is the general area we're contemplating doing something with. Unlike something that happened at the Caltrain board this meeting, I think this basically sets us as an agency above other agencies. But as a result of that, the reason I'm addressing you is that in that general area is where we currently have the RV parking for the employees. And it seems to me a little bit disingenuous that we should be discussing terminating this facility for employees, which quite frankly, with the wages that we're paying them, can no longer afford to live in Silicon Valley. So what they're forced to basically is to bring their recreational vehicles down there and spend a week there and then drive home in the evening. So I want to put that on the table, and maybe going forward, as you go to the negotiations, is put it as part of the negotiation to say, guys, we've got a problem here because our employees need to yada, yada, yada. And, maybe put it as part of the package. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Any other comments or questions? There is a motion here, right? Yes. Director Camus. All right. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you, Ron. On to item 7.3, this is to adopt the Story Keys Complete Street Study and 10% concept design. With us is Brent Pierce, and making a guest appearance is Jessica Zack.
Thank
you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to do a brief introduction for this item before I turn it over to Brent and Jessica. This study is one of 3 that VTA has been conducting around the county in partnership with member agencies. This is the only one of the 3 that's in one jurisdiction, City of San Jose, so it's been moving quicker than the other 3, so that's why you're seeing this plan here before the others. A quite robust process. This has resulted from a quite robust process and a true partnership between VTA and City of San Jose. San Jose is also actively pursuing implementation of this project, and they are pursuing grant funds in partnership with us to begin the first phase of that implementation. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Brandon and Jessica for a short presentation.
Good evening, Board. My name is Brent, as Chris said, and I'm accompanied by Jessica from the Department of Transportation. After this presentation, you will all be asked to adopt the study and our 10% design concept. So complete streets. They're planned, they're designed, they're funded, and they're constructed for all users. They prioritize safety of pedestrians, cyclists, and transit riders, while also maintaining safe accommodations for autos. In 2015, as Chris said, we began an effort to implement complete streets across the county, and Store Keys was selected and completed recently in partnership with the City of San Jose. It is identified as a safety street in the city's Vision Zero program, and that is a very important point to note. It's the first of the 3 projects that we're embarking on across the county, and when we were reviewing projects, it ranked 3rd on a list of 12 regionally. These projects were all reviewed in detail at VTA's Technical Advisory Committee before they were accepted, and they were accepted using the criteria on the lower bullet there on your slide. The corridor is located primarily in East San Jose. It crosses through Council Districts 3, 7, and 5. It's one of the most densely populated areas of the city, and it includes VTA's 3rd highest ridership route. That's Route 25, which carries an average of 7,000 weekday riders. So informed by the board's adopted strategic plan and shared safety objectives from our partners at the city, this study is really a culmination of a community-based process to enhance the safety for all modes, to enhance the transit rider experience, to improve pedestrian and bicycle facilities for people of all ages, that's very important, and to provide access across barriers on the corridor, primarily State Route 87 and US 101 interchanges. So the study really sought to engage community members to understand how they use the corridor today. That was very important. But it also sought their ideas on how they would like to move and use the corridor in the future. After all, we are an agency that provides solutions that move you, so we thought that it was important to ask them that question. After engaging them on multiple levels, 4 themes rose to the top. So these themes really helped guide the design vision, which we'll cover shortly. Keep the corridor friendly for all modes is what we heard. Emphasize the uniqueness of each community along the project, particularly small businesses along the corridor. Enhance wayfinding, signage, trees, and the overall streetscape. But overwhelmingly, the largest common challenge was address unsafe vehicle speeds, particularly at intersections. The study began with your kind of typical 3-meeting engagement approach, but we really quickly realized that that approach was not going to work for this community. So we really course-corrected mid-study to meet the needs of the community. We engaged them in kind of typical public meetings, through newsletters and through online engagement. But what we really did with the study is we met them on the street. We met the community where they're at their schools, at their businesses. We talked with teachers and children and transit riders at our stops, and we surveyed them on what they wanted to see as part of this study. And we're happy to report that we engaged directly with over 500 people to help present the vision tonight. So after 2 years of work, the vision for the corridor is broken down into 3 segments. First, the Willow segment, opportunities to I would say significantly modify this street really weren't possible because it's already a narrow street. It already has 2 narrow lanes. It's located in a business district. So improvements on Willow instead really focus on safety at intersections, particularly 3 complex intersections. Realignment of these intersections will enhance safety for all modes along this east-west corridor, particularly at Lick and Graham on the left and in the middle. We're proposing roundabouts as part of this vision, and this vision is really strongly supported by the community. The intersections will enhance the business district. It will create distinct gateways for the business district, and it will also improve our transit operations along the segment of the corridor. It also addresses pedestrian and bicycle visibility and reduces conflict points. On Keys, the vision for Keys is to prioritize walking over other modes by reducing crossing distances at intersections, filling in missing trees, providing improved pedestrian scale lighting to enhance safety along this section of the corridor, and providing more crosswalks. The long-term vision for Keys reduces the street from 4 lanes to 3, and it reallocates that space into a separated bikeway for cyclists. It also allows space for a center lane, depicted there in the graphic, to improve turning operations for automobiles onto local streets. And finally, Story, the largest section of the corridor. It's currently 6 lanes, and as many as you know, it's a major regional destination within the city. It has connections to important freeways and large regional shopping centers. The long-term vision for this part of the corridor really prioritizes transit. The vision is to create a curbside, bus-only lane with enhanced stops and transit signal priority to improve transit operations along this section of the corridor. It will also install a separated bikeway and excess space from reducing travel lanes from 6 to 4. It includes very important safety improvements at McLaughlin and King, which are identified in the city's Vision Zero program. And it will improve trail crossings for Coyote Creek Trail and the Lower Silver Creek Trail, which are very key regional trails in the South Bay at locations where they cross the corridor. And so now I'm going to pass this baton to Jessica, and she's going to talk to you all about what our next steps are.
Thank you to the VTA board for having us today, and also really to the staff at VTA for working very closely with us, and particularly with our Vision Zero team on this study. We appreciate the partnership and the collaboration. We are very much interested in not just having this be a study that ends at this stage, which is why, as Chris mentioned earlier, with VTA, we already applied for funding to take the westernmost portion of this corridor and see if we can secure an active transportation program grant to make it a reality, especially those intersections that Brent was talking about, significantly reworking for safety and mobility purposes. We're also able to do some things relatively quickly that are sort of a light implementation of the project. Along Story Road, where we were already going to repave this year, we're putting in some enhanced buffered bike lanes and making some of the other complete street improvements that we see as a first step towards this program, and also critical to our overall Vision Zero goals of slowing speeds and reducing serious injuries and fatalities. So we look forward to continued work together to continue to advance this study and into implementation. So thank you.
And we'll take questions.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. Looks fabulous. Questions, Director Camus?
Thank you for the presentation. This is the second time I sat through it, so yes. I will bring up my only concern during the first time we talked was the potential implementation of the eastern portion. And I know that you said you were on the streets and did evaluation and talked to people that ride the bus. I do not think that you actually talked to the people who actually rode cars, because if you did that, you might possibly understand that they don't want that lane taken away, because in fact, I think more needs to be done to reach out to those folks, because I think the congestion during least commuter hours on Story Road is horrendous. I think they would be up in arms if you took away a lane in each direction. That being said, I want to thank you all. I am in approval of going forward with the eastern portion completely. I think that you did a brilliant design, but I think we need to keep studying the western end, especially when you get past Keys. That tends to be a choke point. It's not my district, but I travel there occasionally. And anyway, I just think we need to give serious thought before we take away traffic lanes. I'll make a motion to approve the report.
Motion from Director Camus and second from Director Diep. Just to follow on that point, I've supported every road diet. We have pushed at City Hall and often against the resistance of residents with pitchforks who would like to burn down City Hall for it. And I recognize there's always a natural resistance. I don't think I've ever seen it done next to a freeway entrance and off-ramp. And I have to say, I know there's a difference between courageous and heroic, and I'm wondering, are we trying to be heroic on the eastern part of Story next to 280?
Next to 101.
Oh, 101, I'm sorry, forgive me. That's what I meant to say, 101, thank you.
Perhaps I can start with this, but we have been working in tandem and doing essentially 10% concept design and roughly 10% traffic analysis at this point. So we have looked at volumes, looked at speeds, looked at intersection performance and the potential change. We recognize, with the staff that we do need to look further at a corridor level analysis for the entire Keys and Story area to allow us to really understand the interaction between intersections and the traffic patterns at a much more granular level before moving forward with the lane changes. So I think we appreciate the comments, and that will be kind of an ongoing design and evaluation.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that we're continuing to take in data, because certainly when we see that there are plenty of overbuilt roads in our city, and I recognize the need often, particularly where you have speed issues in neighborhoods. It just seems like in a commercial district like that where we do have plenty of traffic, the howls are going to be at a high volume. So thank you for your consideration on that. I just had one question about in your community engagement. Something I had always dreamed about doing, and I was trying to talk to the Department of Transportation into doing this about 7 years ago when the project was first being proposed by First Community Housing on 2nd and Keys, was that wimpy looking Cadwalader Park there in the middle that's sort of isolated and lonely, and you'll never see a child on because it's in the middle of busy roads. I was trying to talk them into closing 2nd Street to enable us to expand Cadwalader Park all the way to those businesses, which I guess now would be First Community housing project that will soon be completed. Yep. And I'm wondering, did that ever come up in discussion as we look at this corridor, given that it would be a nice pedestrian enhancement, obviously, and an amenity that would make this more multimodal and all those other happy things we like?
Believe it or not, the discussion did come up, not necessarily the complete closure of 2nd, but kind of a taking possibly of more space on 2nd Street to add to the park or enhance the park in some way.
Right.
What made it into the design vision was kind of pushing out the curb and making more of a safety improvement, so we didn't necessarily go to that distance in the study.
Okay. Well, any prodding on your part would be greatly appreciated.
Take the comments, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Director Pross, since I know this goes through your district.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, so first off, I want to say thank you. Thank you, Jessica, as well, for being here and presenting. I'm really, really interested on the West End and the work that's going to be getting done. I'm excited that that's a good start. There are 2 other roads there, Vine and Almaden, that prior to 87 were the southwest, the north-south connector between downtown and South San Jose. And unfortunately, they have stayed that way as the community has been much more residential and schools, and we've had unfortunate deaths of pedestrians and children crossing the roads there. And so we've done some, and I want to thank VTA as well in regards to some road diets there along Vine and Almaden. But this is going to be another key component now going in the east-west corridor, and just in general in the area there, which is definitely much more. At this point, it's a small neighborhood, and it has a business district along Willow there. No longer is an area where we need cars zooming through. I would maybe echo some of the sentiment from my colleagues here that that's certainly not the case on the east side over Story Road. There much larger lanes and more lanes and cars that I think in essence we certainly see them moving at a much faster pace, but definitely not the case. So I think it's easy for all of us to kind of agree on the western corridor here. I'm completely in agreement. I'm excited about this opportunity. I do think it could be a bit of a stretch as we get out there to Story Road to talk about some condensing down a lane, but I know that from the feedback from the community that participated there, they were very adamant about traffic problems and obviously the issues and how scary it is to cross over the street there. And so I know that is true, the sentiment that you are expressing. Community, I have heard that from them as well. And so just looking forward to this. I think this is a great corridor, and just glad that VTA and the city are working together on this.
Director Carr?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really interested in sort of the process that we used and went through on this. And is this something that we hope we're going to sort of package up and take around the county? Did we learn some great things that we can maybe utilize in other cities and in other jurisdictions to be able to do more when it comes to complete streets?
Yeah, we have two other projects, one on Tasman, which is a partnership with VTA in the city of Milpitas, and Sunnyvale, and Santa Clara, thank you, and San Jose, yes. So that's actually our largest multi-jurisdictional complete streets project. And then we have a third on Bascom, which spans parts of San Jose, Campbell, and the county. And so, part of these three projects, Story going first, we've taken some of the things we've learned or some of the strategies that we've learned, particularly on the engagement front, and applied those to other complete streets corridors. And we're looking at other opportunities to expand our complete streets portfolio throughout the county. We're always looking for additional funding or other things to accomplish.
And is that sort of the main thing that's going to hold us back from taking this to other places as funding? I mean, it usually is.
In many cases, yeah. So we've applied for additional funding for one segment, as Jessica talked about, and we're going to continue to look for funding for the other segments of Story. You want to add something?
Did you mean about other corridors throughout the county?
Yeah, exactly. Expanding it to other corridors and other projects.
Yeah, funding is always a challenge. This was a new program that we established in 2015, right. So we had to look for sources that weren't normally available to us to do work like this.
Okay.
One of the great lessons we've learned, though, just to answer onto that, is the partnership aspect of this, working very closely with our cities, has really proven fruitful.
Director Chavez?
Yeah, so I just want to appreciate that your point about 101 and Story. Like I especially I think coming from you in particular, because you've been such an advocate of bike lanes. One thing I'm just getting nervous about is that as we have more and more we have a greater and greater approach to complete streets, I think we're going to have a lot more people across our communities unhappy with the number of bike lanes they're seeing and the number of bikes they're not seeing in the lanes. And one thing I'm observing in downtown is that because there aren't very many bikes in the bike lanes, the people are driving in them. And I'm thinking about the point you raised about pushing the curbs out and making those crossings shorter. I'm nervous that they may not be safe enough for people to actually be standing in as people are getting acclimated to them and or angry about them. And I mention that because at some point I thought it might be of value, since we are all broader jurisdictional leaders for us to get sort of a bigger briefing on the bike strategy countywide, and maybe even have Shiloh's group come in and have a conversation about that with Complete Streets with a bigger, and I think this kind of speaks, Larry, to the point that you're raising about like how does this all get to where it all needs to be, just so that that as a body we have a bigger lens on this, in particular because we have some Measure B funding that is going to require all of us to be much more engaged in this, and just recognizing that we have not sold the public on this yet, and everybody who tries to come to the county building, I actually got scolded by a faith leader who shall remain nameless, but has an accent.
Over the Heading Street bike lanes? You blame me, I hope.
You're not, heartbeat. No, but my point is that I think people are asking questions, and this is the right time to answer them. I don't know if my colleagues would be interested, but I think it would be helpful.
I was hoping they were done yelling about the Heading Street lanes 4 years ago, but I guess not. Director Pross?
I just wanted to bring up just another issue as well that has come up around the bike lanes, and that's, and Jessica, you know this as well, and that's the trash cans. They get, left in them, obviously needing to get picked up on trash day, but that makes the bike lanes rather unusable one day a week. And so, and that we now have heard that repeatedly, and I noticed it was in the report here that, you noticed that as well from the community, or you noted that. And so being conscious about how we're installing these bike lanes, knowing that, we need to do trash pickups, and then all of a sudden, now what does that do? That forces somebody that's in the street to go into the roadway. And so I think it was great that you noted that in here. And I'm hoping that our Better Bikeway system and Protected Bikeway is going to be able to address that concern. And then obviously as we go and build new bike lanes, that we're conscious about that. And if there's a way to resolve that, certainly would love to be able to do that. So,
other questions or comments? Okay, we have Blair Beekman.
Hi, thank you. To mention about the pavement, the possible pavement this summer, I attended the meetings during the August, and it was mentioned that in the CAC meeting or the bike committee that when you put bike lanes at the very edges of the road, there's a lot more junk that collects in the curbs there. And that makes the ride for the bicyclists very uncomfortable, gravel and litter and stuff like that. So I thought that would be something to note. I guess another point I wanted to make was that I'm very worried about that with this project and with the Tasman project, and I don't know with the Bascom project. There's going to be a lot of technology involved, and possibly surveillance, and a lot of surveillance. Well, not possibly, but there will be surveillance. And it's my job here to ask you how much surveillance is needed in that area. I don't think it will have to be as bad as much as you may think, and I hope that can be the case. I'm sorry that I'm so short in having better opinion about the subject, but I just honestly believe that you really have to consider minimal uses of surveillance technology in these areas and not overload the system, basically. I mean, you don't want to just make the whole area paranoid, basically, is what I'm saying, which is what can happen. And finally, what was just spoken about, I really hope that you can develop transportation itself here, the agency here in San Jose. It's really doing well in San Francisco and the Bay Area. That's what's going to bring the bicycles around if we learn how to do that better. It takes time and work. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, on item 7.3, all in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. We've deferred item 7.4, so we're on to 7.5, which is the employment agreement with Evelyn Tran for the general counsel position. A motion from our vice chair and second from Director Chavez. Any comments? I see no public cards. All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Congratulations, Evelyn. That was quick. And a very quick chair switch. Welcome back. Okay. So I managed to somehow move 6.13 ahead. So I think that means we're on to, I'm sorry, 8 point? Oh, we are, yes, you're right. The general manager report.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good evening to all.
I'm going to recuse myself from your comment. Although this is an informal item, this is your informational item, this is your board report, I'm recusing myself to protect VTA from any possible Section 1090 issues arising from my husband's employment by Cisco Systems. So even though you're going to be talking about something broad, I'm going to step off the dais.
Okay, thank you. Oh, more?
Just to add to Member Chavez's comment, I wanted to put on the record that this is just a status update on the SBBX when it gets there, and it does not involve a pending action that requires the participation or the making of a governmental decision relating to a contract. So I just want to make sure that's on the record.
So I just want to clarify, because my wife also works for Cisco, that I don't have to leave the room.
Yes, I would encourage you to join Member Chavez.
All right.
Save some food for us. Thanks. Anybody else want to work for Cisco? Okay. Thank you.
I just wanted to mention that the reference is to item 8.1.B, I believe. Yes. Okay, so now on to the general manager's report, 8.1. So we heard you, we listened, and we're going to implement. There is a very popular app called Transit that provides real-time information. So the VTA has endorsed the Transit app, which would allow all of us opportunity to plan our trips. It provides schedule information. And the great thing about this app is it does not matter where you are in this region or the country. It then downloads information for the transit system in that location. So we are not only excited, but it has the generic name Transit, and I want to take this opportunity to thank our team, and I see that Cody's here, and others, Gary Miskell and others, who helped us narrow down the multiple options that our customers had to deal with when they were visiting our area or they live here, trying to figure out what would give them the best information, the best schedule. So Transit it is. It cost us nothing. All we had to do is say, we want VTA to be part of this. It is easy to navigate. And one of the other great things about this app is that it will share information, trip data with us, anonymized, and it would also help customize information that we need just for our own use. The usage, we launched this several weeks ago, and the usage has increased 35% since our campaign, our promotional campaign, under the direction of Bernice Alanis. About 5,000 VTA riders use the app every weekday, and 20,000 have used it in the past month. I want to share with you some of the testimonials. They're in the quotes from users of this app. I'm not going to read them. We're just going to flash them up there so you can see that there are individuals that are not just us saying how great this is. And then I also want to share with you a couple of videos that we have on the use of the app. They're going to run in succession. It's about 3 videos, and they're very short, very brief presentations. If we could get those going, Stephen? Is there sound? Oh, no sound. Okay. So pretend you're sitting in front of your desktop, your iPad, or your iPhone, and you're on this app. And this is showing us in real time, I presume, as in now. Okay. There is sound.
That was cool.
For those of you that need a little bit of a caffeine. But as you can see, just through this brief video, it's the colors, the graphics, the type of the letter sizing. I think this is just much more friendlier. And this, together with all the other things that we have been doing, should enable users and those who are visiting our area to have a much better experience and not have to rely solely on calling our customer service for assistance, which we're always there to provide, but this gives them the opportunity to deal with their own travel within their own time and using their own tools. The other item I wanted to bring to your attention is that we're in September, and September is Safety Month across the country, and in our great state of California is Rail Safety Month. So we want, once again, to take this opportunity to talk about all of the things that we have put in place to ensure our customers and the general public safety around our rail system, but also, again, encourage you to share these materials with your councils, with your cities, with the county. It's a very simple. We talk about look, listen, and pay attention, but we also want to emphasize that if you see tracks, think train. We have, we recently had another incident where there was a cyclist and a light rail train that came in contact. And these are the kinds of things that we are consistently building reminders and awareness. If the gates are down, if lights are flashing, if there's a horn going in those areas where we are allowed to use the horn, then it's time to really not try to beat that train. The train, unfortunately, always wins. We also want to use multiple communication channels. It's not just our website, but we've got our blog post. We have videos, the videos that we showed you last month. We have come up with different versions of that so that we can broadcast them at all of our facilities and our customer service center, and eventually when we have monitors on our trains and our buses, we'll be able to share that information as well. We're not, I thought we could share the information at our transit system, stations, light rail stations, given that we do have the screens, but several cities have different requirements that would not allow us to have video with sound. Lastly, I want to say that the Santa Clara County Sheriff Transit Patrol is going to be conducting a sting operation to cite unsafe practices around transit systems. So individuals who are crossing at grade crossings when the gates are down, and cyclists or motorists will be cited by our Sheriff Transit Patrol unit. And that effort is going to go in full-fledged throughout this month. Another item on my report has to do with the safety exercise that we conducted last month. And this exercise was hosted by the Sheriff's Office and VTA using a grant from the Homeland Security Exercise and Evaluation Program through the Transportation Security Administration. And it included approximately 110 personnel from 12 different agencies, including BART, Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office, Milpitas Police, San Jose PD, California Highway Patrol, among others, and the fire departments for the two jurisdictions of Santa Clara County and San Jose. We had an additional 97 volunteers that did role playing, and the purpose really was to focus on a multi-agency collaborative response to a major emergency. It was a very successful training exercise, and it will make not only our public safety personnel better prepared to respond to major emergencies in our area, but also as we prepare to open up the stations, that this level of collaboration and the exchange and the familiarity with the individuals that we're going to be working with is further enhanced. Another item in my report has to do with a quick update on Measure B. As we had indicated previously, we thought that the appeal was going to be heard on Tuesday, September 25th in San Jose, but we were informed yesterday by the court that it had unilaterally decided to reschedule the hearing date, a date to be determined, and we're very hopeful that it will happen soon, given that November will be 2 years since voters voted on this measure. And the half-cent sales tax has continued to accumulate in an escrow account, but the needs of not only our streets and highways, but the needs of all the other programs, and 8 other programs on that list are beginning to become more evident, and clearly we'll continue monitoring and providing updates to you as we learn more. In the interim, our staff has been working feverishly, working directly with each of the cities that are going to be receiving funding through the various programs, and have developed the activities that are outlined. We're ready to hit the ground running the minute that the court says go. Moving on the agenda, on the report, VTA's wellness program. So our employees are certainly our greatest asset, and we have invested in a series of wellness programs, activities, and opportunities that include everything from health and fitness for our employees. So this program is managed by our human resources team, and they have utilized different strategies to encourage employees to live a healthier lifestyle. We incorporate a lot of our wellness into events and activities that we host. This has been recognized by the American Heart Association's Workplace Health Achievement Index measures, and they have given us the silver level recognition for our wellness program for 2018. So I want to just take this opportunity again to thank the program manager and all employees who participated in the various health-related activities throughout the year. And again, kudos to our human resources department. Moving along is the, in support of Pride's unity, diversity, and strength, VTA's employees and their families participated in the Silicon Valley Pride Parade last Sunday. And I want to say thank you and acknowledge the efforts of our graphics team under the marketing group, because they came up, they designed this, and our employees in the operations division were able to place this decal on one of the buses that we used at the parade that took place. I want to thank both Mayor Liccardo for joining us at the bus for a photograph, and also for Supervisor and Board Member Ken Yeager, who not only joined us, but marched with the team for a segment of the parade. So thank you. It was a great time, and we were proud to be part of the Ride with Pride bus. The next item on my report is item 8.1.A, which is the government affairs update, and that information is in your folders. We reported on it verbally last month. I also want to take this point to mention that the ridership and security stats are also in the reading folder, and they are in the public binder. So with that, we'll move on to item 8.1.B, which is the update on the Silicon Valley Rapid Transit Program, more specifically BART Phase 1. Carolyn Gonad is going to present, and Dennis Radcliffe and Krishna are going to be joining in for any questions from the board.
Before we jump in, we do have one comment from a member of the public, Roland LeBrun, on the transit app.
Oh.
I don't want to be a party pooper, but I was extremely disappointed with that app. I mean, obviously, I logged on VTA Wi-Fi, pops up, download it. It basically told me that the VTA was running, random services in the general vicinity of my house. It didn't have the concept of my location. And I honestly couldn't figure out a way to enter my destination. And I used to be a software engineer, but I guess I'm getting old. The thing is, I don't understand why we're doing this. Everybody these days, whether they're Uber, Google, or Lyft or whatever, they use Google for navigation. And I think what we should be doing, everybody's familiar with it. They go maps, destination, boom, and it takes you to where you want to go. And I think we need to teach people to click on the transit button because they really are advancing. Because now they're taking you, they're actually showing you how to walk, walk by block, turn right, turn left. When I'm on the light rail this morning, I had it going, got to 10 million bus, say, hey, Buster, you better get off the light rail because you're catching Caltrain. So why aren't we trying to educate the general public at looking at transit alternatives and then see sometimes where there's a better outcome? If you see in San Francisco, trust me, take transit. So I just thought I'd put that out there, but I found that application really disappointing, and I uninstalled it after about 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. LeBrun. Director Prowse?
Actually, my question was under the same thing. That transit app, it looked like the picture we saw showed a moving bus. Wouldn't they need to be able to capture GPS data of our buses in order to do that? So do they actually have real-time data, or are they just basing it off of predetermined stop time?
It's real time. Let me ask if Angelique would give Cody her seat so that he can provide more information.
Good evening. Sorry, good evening. Hi, Cody Kratz, Administrator of Digital Communications. And yes, we do have real-time information on probably, I think, all of our buses and all of our trains at this point. So that is, I think, within 30 to 45 seconds, the real location of the vehicle.
And that is just publicly accessible, or because we partnered with them, then they have the access?
No, it is actually publicly accessible. It's actually provided to Google Maps and any other apps that want to consume it. We actually provide, and this is provided by another department, so Gary would know more about this than I do, but the feeds are actually provided through MTC on a regional level. They condense all these feeds and then provide that to Google.
Okay, and so, again, I guess similar to what Roland was saying, because I actually do use Google Maps as well, and it has worked all right. So is it similar then? They're getting the same data that Google Maps would be getting?
Right, and it's a fair point. A lot of our customers do use Google Maps. Whatever we find works to help someone use transit, we really support whatever works for them. There are other good apps out there. We chose to endorse this one primarily because it was so popular with our riders, and because it's focused exclusively on transit. So you don't have to, I should say it's focused on non-driving solutions, so you don't have to click any buttons. It's automatically going to give you biking, or electric scooters are in there, as well as transit options.
Okay, great, thanks.
Cool. I guess that was my question, I think. So we're not actually expending any dollars to support this. This is purely just, hey, we're endorsing it.
Exactly, yeah.
Great.
We've
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Cody. Yes, Director. Yep.
I just want to weigh in and say that I actually really like this app, so I was quite excited. It's not just around the country, but around the world even. So Paris, Berlin, other cities, every great city. So when I was using this in Paris, when we went, last summer, it helped me get around because different than Google, which does the same function, it uses GPS on your phone that it'll buzz you if you're going around the Paris subway, or if you're a non-English speaker and you're going around VTA, it will actually vibrate and say, get off now. And so it actually navigates you through where you're going, and so I thought it was quite useful. And I saw that it was on San Francisco, but not in the South Bay, and I actually had the thought of, how do I get VTA on this? And so I'm actually quite excited that this happened.
If I may, what Director Diep is referencing is the Go feature, which was one of the videos. We didn't have time to play there, but it walks you through like a virtual assistant for your transit trip. So
cool.
pretty handy.
And it's just transit at the App Store?
It is. Pretty
Fabulous.
compliant.
We'll download it. Thank you. Other questions, comments? No? Okay, on to the SVRT. Thank you, Cody.
Good evening, board members. I'm up here this evening to talk about the update on the BART Silicon Valley Berryessa Extension Project. I'm joined here with Dennis Radcliffe, who's our Deputy Director for the SVRT program, and Krishna Devi, who's the SVRT program manager. At the June 2018 board meeting, VTA staff presented an update to the full funding grant agreement schedule based on a detailed schedule risk assessment conducted by VTA with FTA and BART. At that time, VTA noted that the agreed upon date for the modified and the new FFGA revenue service date to be requested would be September 2019. The original FFGA date, to remember, was actually June 28th, 2018. Subsequent to the board meeting on June 12th, VTA was informed that some communications equipment supplied to the Berryessa Extension project may not be contract compliant. The project team, working with BART, moved quickly on an assessment of the issue and the schedule risk it imposed. We notified FTA, and they graciously agreed on extending the date that VTA would request the new FFGA revenue service date to August 15th. VTA has moved on resolving the issue and has reanalyzed the schedule risk going forward. VTA has adjusted its request for an extension to the revenue service date under the full funding grant agreement to reflect initiation of passenger service no later than December 31st, 2019. This date is considered to be the latest date for project completion, even after considering the remaining risks ahead. The budget remains unchanged, or we're forecasting it unchanged, and we continue to forecast $150 million in unallocated contingency, and that would be the anticipated budget savings. VTA's project team is working to complete the project as soon as possible, and Dennis Radcliffe and Krishna Devi will provide more detail on the scope of the issue and the project activities to resolve and bring in the project as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Carolyn. As Carolyn indicated, after months of systems testing, VTA has determined that some communications equipment that was supplied, assembled, and installed on the project does not comply with all contract requirements. It cannot be made acceptable, and that it must be removed and replaced. In some cases, this equipment has limited availability, and so replacement equipment has required some re-engineering to assure interoperability with available replacement equipment and the other systems that have already been installed and accepted. This problem involves a significant number of devices and will undoubtedly extend the project completion by approximately 6 months. The project includes a fiber optic communications network that carries the data from numerous other systems. This network runs through the entire 10 miles of the extension and connects to just about every device in some way. The network includes hundreds of data control devices that have been assembled from subcomponents by our contractors, and they have been assembled to perform specific data management functions. These devices are generally referred to as switches or routers. They're not dissimilar from what many of you have in your homes, but they're certainly far more sophisticated. After assessing the problem, we have determined that approximately 1,100 devices will have to be removed and replaced. Although testing of the unaffected systems continues, the extent of retesting required after the equipment has been replaced is still under evaluation. All of the new equipment has been specified, and the replacement equipment has been ordered. Some of it is beginning to arrive, and some will be still arriving through this month and next month. A replacement and testing program is already being implemented, and all of the new making these corrections to the communication system will take several months and will continue through the end of this year. The precise impact on the completion is unknown at this time, and a practical forecast for project completion can't be made until after all the replacement equipment has been installed and the retesting program is completed. Nevertheless, VTA's project team is working to complete the project as soon as possible and will provide a forecast for completion after the replacement testing program is completed. We should be able to forecast provide a forecast for project completion sometime in the first quarter of next year. I've asked Krishna Davi to be here tonight to address a couple of related issues. Krishna is responsible for managing our communications with the FTA and also for managing the replacement program that we're described here. Thanks.
Thanks, Dennis. Good evening, members. As Carolyn indicated, on August 15th, VTA submitted a letter to FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, requesting extension of Phase 1 revenue service date to December 31st, 2019. Subsequent discussions with FTA indicated they have no comments, concerns, or questions about the request, but they did request additional information about VTA's plan for correcting the problem. Regarding the plan, VTA has established a joint VTA BART technical team. This team of experts will oversee the assembly, bench testing, and installation of network devices. Experts from VTA's IT department are also actively involved in this analysis and in the implementation. An installation sequence is being developed, and our approach is to minimize the impact to ongoing testing as we install and test the network. Back to you, Dennis.
Okay, thank you. So with regard to the project completion, as Carolyn indicated, the December 31st, 2019 date includes approximately 6 months of schedule contingency, and some fraction of that should be expected to be consumed in the work ahead. If progress goes well over the next several months, the project might be completed substantially earlier than December 2019. However, we will need to complete the replacement and retesting program before the reforecasting a revenue service date. The project budget does indeed remain unchanged and should preserve the $150 million of unallocated contingency if the project is completed earlier than December next year. Carol?
So that completes our report, and we'll take any questions.
Thank you. All right, questions? Director Pross.
Thank you. So I think, one thing that continues to kind of baffle me is it's good news, but hearing that the $150 million continues to be preserved, one of the things that I immediately think of is there has to be staff that we are paying beyond a time frame that we had expected to pay them. And so how is it that we're still within the $150 million contingency and not expending anything?
Okay, so within the project budget, and actually this time we actually did not bring the project budget and showed up. We usually show a series of different line items that for the different facilities that are in activities for the project. In each of those lines and costs that we show, or those budget items, we actually have allocated contingency within that. And then we have the other line that shows the unallocated contingency. So we're eating up that allocated contingency for risks that, we thought were probable during the course of the project. So primarily we've been using the allocated contingency, and we have not touched the unallocated contingency.
Okay, so I guess it has sort of been clear every time in regards to the unallocated contingency not being touched. But I guess what hasn't been easy to understand is how much do we have in allocated contingency that we haven't spent yet, right? That we may now tap into, but yet still not have to get into that unallocated.
Well, that's a difficult question to answer in the way it was framed, but the way our allocated contingency works is we forecast all the activities necessary to complete the project without all of the risks associated with the schedule forecast that FTA requires for our request. And that schedule is an everything goes right schedule and concludes sometime midsummer next year. And should everything actually go right, we will have consumed all of the allocated contingency. To the extent that we go beyond that, we will need to rely on the allocated contingency. But at that point in the project, the costs are rather low in terms of the monthly rate of expenditure, so they're really not that large compared to the 150. Also, these problems we view these problems as generally contractor caused problems, and to the degree we can, we'll be seeking recovery from our contractors for our costs of extension.
for the cost of extension, would that be the cost of like the equipment in this case, or you're saying just in general the cost of extension?
Well, it would cost of replacement equipment and cost of ongoing overhead and staff cost.
Okay, so what I was discussing as well, then it's staff cost as well. If there's ongoing overhead in that regard, then we would also hold them accountable for that. Okay, thanks.
Okay, other questions? Director Diep, and then.
Yeah, so this is disappointing to hear, but I just want to, I guess, reiterate that the last time you came to do a report on this, you gave us a timeline of the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. And this is new. It was not incorporated in that previous report because it just happened or was just discovered. But even with this, the worst case scenario timeline does not shift. We're still within that range, correct?
Well, as Carolyn indicated, the last report staff gave to the board in June indicated the worst case scenario, what we called a 80% probability, concluded in mid-September. Once we incorporate the impact that we are talking about tonight and the remaining risks, the same kind of calculation indicates that 80% probability would be at the end of 2019, next year in December. Okay. The early date is not as, the early date is in the late summer next year, but given the nature of the work in the next several months, it's difficult to measure, but you know, we're pretty confident with the December 31, 2019.
Okay. And just from a, you said that we try to recover the cost of whatever the differential is from the people supplying the faulty equipment. How combative or compliant are they with our efforts so far? What is their attitude?
Well, the contractors we're working with are working very hard to provide the support we need to get this problem behind us. In some cases, they've ordered some equipment. In some cases, they're having a VTA provide them the equipment so that we can get the equipment as quickly as possible for replacement. So at this point, they're very cooperative. And in terms of responsibility, that's will fall out of the normal course of contract administration.
Okay. And as a matter moving forward, have we been able to get lessons, amend processes, or just kind of lessons learned from this experience?
So, well, there's several, but you know, the unusual part of this problem is that it's discovered at the end of the process. Generally speaking, contractors remain in possession of the work before it's completed, and there is a structured process for accepting completed work at the end, and that would involve certifying all of the equipment provided and its configuration and those kinds of things, and that's generally the period in which this was discovered. Some of this might have been able to be discovered if we had specified examination of equipment earlier on, but that's not normal industry practice, but certainly worth considering. And another opportunity would be to not include it in the contract for construction, but to provide that equipment as owner-supplied material. We did not do either of those in this case.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we're kind of in a strange situation because sometimes it seems with some of our services we do better financially when we don't provide the service. And you know, so one of my questions is, you were talking about the recovery of the actual equipment costs, but you know, is there, and you mentioned staff costs, but I don't know if we figured out, is there an opportunity cost for delay to, you know, providing service? And also, you know, we've been talking about the next network now for several years, and we, you know, we keep saying, like in June when the other delay came up, in terms of looking at the plans that we had for changing a lot of the rest of our network so that it would better interface into the BART extension. And have we had a chance to look at that, like, as I said, look at opportunity costs, look at revenue generation, and these other, I know we were almost a little worried about implementing next network in terms of the additional service requirements that brought with it, and thus costs. So, you know, I don't know if staff has had a chance to evaluate that larger picture.
On the BART side, because we do have the collection of the measure, B, the 1/8 cent sales tax from 2008. That just continues to accumulate, which is good. It gives us a basis for going forward as a I don't know, a cushion going forward in terms of our revenue costs. And so that's monies we don't spend. Not necessarily happy about that. The issue with the next network is the staff continues, VTA staff continues to look at that. But part of it is to being optimize our service better. When BART came on board to optimize it, and we would, it predicted to see higher ridership. So in a way, it's hurting the idea that we aren't probably getting some of that revenues or the benefits that we would see if we restructured the service around the BART stations.
Nuria?
Yes, and if I may just add, because that's a very important question. If we were not only building this, but we were the operators, I think that it would be easier to try to factor in an opportunity cost that was lost because of the timing of opening for service. But given that the determination to the revenue service date rests with the BART operations, the BART agency, that to try to figure out when they would have felt that the system was compliant and that all of the issues that they may or may not identify throughout the testing had been satisfied, fully satisfied, to try to figure out what an opportunity lost cost would have been, I think would be much more difficult because we're the owners but not the operators.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. We have several members like to speak. From the community, NDI. I'm sorry, that's ASIN, NDI. Forgive me, ASIN. Followed by Roland LeBrun.
So I don't have a lot to say. Mr. Chairman, General Manager, I'll just reiterate questions I've asked in the past. Knowing again that there's going to be a delay with the BART extension, what are the plans around the next network expansion? Since we're in discussions at the ad hoc committee around service changes, including potential service cuts, are there going to be significant changes to the next network plan, and does that include having a community engagement process? And then the second question I have is, I haven't heard the name of this contractor so far. I haven't heard the names of any managers or anyone in charge of this project yet. This is, I think, the 6th time that I've seen the deadline change. And so far, I've seen no accountability as far as management or contracting. And, I'd like to see that. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's come back to those topics in a moment. Roland LeBrun.
Thanks again. And Director Peral you're absolutely right. This $150 million is just not possible. And I've been watching this now probably for 18 months, yeah. And the bottom line is that they're cooking the books. And we looked earlier, GNA, there was the mention of, why can't we have a dashboard to see what's going on? Well, do you know what? We have a dashboard. It's called the 2000 Measure Rate Transit Improvement Program. And you can see everything that's going on there. And you get a snapshot every 3 months. And you can see, for instance, right now, that phase 1 is not $2.2 billion. It's heading for $3.5 billion. That's phase 1. Another thing that you're going to find in there, if you look at phase 2, is that we've got a $3.2 billion funding gap. So, I have a business major, but, at heart, I'm an engineer. I'd rather work on engineering challenges and do this. But at the end of the day, if I have to do this, I will do this. I'll get to the bottom of it. All I got to do is to issue a PRA for the ACP records. I've done it before and just basically rip it apart. I've got the time slots. I know what's going on. My advice to you is to refer this to the auditors. You got the information there. Just let the auditors go loose on that and report back to you. Now, moving forward, you've got to understand that the same cast of contractors are responsible for phase 2. Phase 1 was supposed to be the easy bit, right? So the first thing I would say here, reach out to BART. I know there have been lots of, reach out to BART, have a technical assessment of what's going on here, and then telling us what to do. And moving forward, frankly, I think we're looking at staff changes here. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on some of the issues raised in public comment. First, I assume there is going to be some kind of community process relating to the rescoping of the next network plan. I know that's not your issue that you're working on, but is that something we're likely to announce sometime soon, General Manager?
Well, I just wanted to mention to the board that we have, at the beginning of the year, we did implement part of the next network. It was not a full rollout, but we wanted to share with the public some enhancements to service, given that we were increasing fares. The aspects of the next network that are associated with BART stations in particular, those we can't implement because even though the stations are complete, they're sitting vacant, and we don't want to bring people there because the connections just won't work. In terms of the, I was going to say something about the ad hoc, but since that's not agendized, but I was just going to make a reference that the recommendations that were mentioned by one of the public speakers, that we were going to be eliminating service or reducing service, I don't think that's accurate, but when we come back with the ad hoc recommendations, we'll be talking more specifically about the service modifications.
Okay, all right, that's coming. And then secondly, a question about accountability. First, the name of the subcontractor that was responsible for using the substandard, I believe it's used, routers and switches. What is the name of that company?
There are a number of contractors involved. This is a problem that we encountered on a number of our contracts, not merely one. The nature of this work is we have a contract with a single contractor, and that contract, or each of our contracts is with one contractor, and they of course have subcontractors and subcontractors to them and suppliers to them. Our contract for the BART extension that's determinative here for the schedules with SSH, Skanska Shimmick Herzog joint venture, and the supplier chain includes subcontractors Aldrich Rosenden and subcontractor a company called HSQ. And to the degree that that we find a path for recovery, we would be looking down that chain to evaluate our options for recovery.
Okay. So obviously I know we need to fix the problem first, then we need to ensure that we're made whole by the subcontractors that were performing in a way that's substandard. My understanding, we also have a general contractor, Bechtel Hatchmont, or I'm sorry, they were managing the subs, is that right?
That's not accurate.
That's not accurate.
We have a management team who provides management services, and they are responsible for evaluating the impact, forecasting the schedule, making sure that our processes are accumulating costs properly, and that company is Mott McDonald Bechtel joint venture.
Okay. And would they also have a responsibility for overseeing these kinds of issues?
We haven't determined anything of that nature at this time.
Okay. I just want to, I guess where I'm going with all this, I think, member of the public, Mr. NDI, raised important issues around accountability, and we know that there were private contractors who make plenty of money on big projects like this, and we expect that they'll perform in a way that our riders, our taxpayers, our public expects. We don't have that here, and the question is who pays, and do we have essentially financially responsible subcontractors at the end of this? I'm concerned about somehow or another we get down the line and we find out folks are filing for bankruptcy or something else and we can't recover. Are we underway in looking at those issues?
If I may just interject real quick, Mr. Chair. I think the team is looking at all available options, looking at the facts, And once we have something to come back to the board, we will be bringing it into closed session to discuss that with the board.
Okay, thank you. All right, Director Prowse.
Currently, because it sounds like there's equipment that we can't use and we need to replace, how are we buying that replacement equipment today?
We have several avenues for that. One of our subcontractors has already, and very early on, took the initiative to identify the problem and to order first round of equipment that was obviously in need of replacement. After we conducted extensive engineering and analysis of the scope of the problem, we identified additional equipment that needed to be replaced, and VTA has conducted a series of procurements through its state contracts in coordination with our Information Technology Department, and those devices will be provided to our contractors as owner-supplied material.
Is that saying we're paying for it?
I'm sorry?
Is that saying that we're paying for it at the moment through the...
Yes, we're paying for it through our normal procurement processes, okay. But the structure of our contract administration allows us to protect ourselves from absorbing that cost. It's worth noting that the subcontractor that's has issued the order for the first round of equipment, Aldrich Rosenden, also identified this problem through their own initiative and their own assessment of their supply chain and the installed equipment, and brought this to our attention.
And is that the standard procedure in regards to something like this? I'm just thinking logically here, and so not wearing any kind of legal hat, but you have some equipment that was purchased that is not the right equipment or whatever it may be, but it's not the proper equipment, so we need to purchase new equipment, replace it. If I didn't make that choice and purchase the wrong equipment, I wouldn't expect that I have to go out and buy the new equipment that the person that would be responsible. It sounds like at the moment we're paying for that through procurement kind of processes, and are we then, if that is the case, are we then expecting to get a refund on that equipment?
Refund is not the appropriate term. Generally, we retain sums from our payments to contractors to cover these kinds of problems, so we'd simply withhold payment.
Withholding, it'd be withholding, okay. All right.
And I've forgotten if there was another part of your question, I'm sorry.
No, that answers it. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Okay, well, before I conclude, I just want to note that ridership and security stats are in your reading folder in the public binder. Are there any other comments you'd like to make, Nuria?
I believe there's another card.
Okay. That's another item.
Okay, no, Mr. Chair, thank you for that last statement. That was mine. But yes, that concludes the general manager's report. Thank you.
I just read what's in front of me. Okay. On to my report. After intense lobbying, I want to note that the Friday, September 21st board workshop will be canceled. The notice will be sent to you tomorrow morning. All right.
Is that being rescheduled, or are we going to get noticed, or is it just done?
Just canceled. Yes. So you have those hours back in your life. Mr. Chatty, I believe you'd like to speak on this item. It says here, though, the subject is the closure of Monterey Highway. Actually, is that perhaps under a different item? I don't see how that's related to point 2.
I wasn't sure, but since you're the mayor of San Jose, I figured you'd be appropriate as a chairperson.
Yeah, it's not on this under this item. I'm sorry.
So
I'm happy to talk to you about it afterward, though.
And that's the closure of Monterey Highway from Branham to
Yes,
Williams.
it's not on the agenda.
I don't care. I'm just letting you know.
I understand. Okay, item 8.3 are items of concern referral to administration. Are there any such items? All right, items. Oh, I see. Director McAllister.
Yeah, items concern or referral. In the CMPP, I made a request that if there's a possibility that we can partner up with school districts on using buses to transport children. Today I took a ride over down in Cupertino, Los Altos, along Route 81, which goes along partly and then all of a sudden diverts to De Anza College, and there's a lot of children on that particular route. I also have the same concern in Mountain View, is that we have a lot of children, and there's a way if we can partner up to use VTA buses to transport children in the morning or afternoon. I know that we have an express bus, and there was talk about sending the express bus, and it was going down to Mountain View, and then it would deadhead back empty. Well, maybe we can do something along the financial end of it and partnering up with these cities or school districts and get extra financing or revenue by using our buses to possibly increase transit for those particular school districts, reduce greenhouse gases, and make streets safer for our kids. So,
Okay. That's an item of referral.
Yes.
yes, and I'll refer.
Okay, so the administration will digest that.
Yes.
And
Great.
Number two,
Number two.
and I brought this up before, thousands, well, Mountain View is putting thousands of new units on in other areas, and I once discussed about the Eco-Pass, and there's got to be a better way to market that and do it. I know we were talking about bulk one time and so forth, but I would like to have the board realize that there's a lot of apartment complexes. In Mountain View, we require to have transit passes given out, but a lot of it is somewhat restrictive, and so if we can look at the better way of marketing it and distributing it, we could, again, potentially get more revenue and increase rider transit.
Okay, so noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other items of referral? Okay. Items under 8.4 are either in your packet or reading folder. Oh, we have. Okay, Mr. Beacon, you'd like to speak on the minutes of the PAC committee? Come on up, followed by Roland LeBrun and Mr. Chatty.
Hi, to speak to the TAC committee minutes, item 15 was about the MTC, update on the MTC plans that they have at this time. I just wanted to add to what I previously stated about Supervisor Chavez mentioned the bicycles situation, and it's my feeling that, to really excite the bicycle cause in San Jose, we have to think about how to excite VTA ridership again. That's been really dragging and lagging in some ways, I feel. And in San Francisco and Oakland, East Bay and San Francisco area, it's vibrant and very alive. And down here, it's really taken a nosedive. And for whatever factors that contributed to that, I'm sorry. And I don't know what it takes to build that up slowly, progressively, however it needs to be done. But my guess is if you do that, I think that will just naturally spawn the thought of bicycles and more bicycle ridership and that whole excitement of that cause. And, I hope that the VTA can work on that issue. I also I wanted to mention quickly, and there was mention of, well, I think I'll just save it, and I will mail this letter to yourselves and these few words. And yeah, it's just nice to be inspired by this thought tonight, and I don't mean any harm by it, and it's a slow process, I understand. I just hope that you can bring a vibrancy back to bus ridership again here in the South Bay. Thank you.
Thank you. So next, Mr. Chatty, you wanted to speak on 8.4.c?
Yes. Actually, I do care. I apologize for being a little aggressive before, but I missed the boat on that. VTA Policy Advisory Board, Route 85. Justice Brandes, a long time ago, said, Supreme Court Justice, said that it's important to shed sunlight on, I forgot if it was corruption or what goes on in government. So I just want to raise an issue I'm very concerned about, having fought for Highway 85 when it was a dirt strip many years ago, 30-some years ago, in fact, 38 years ago. And Mr. Dearden was playing his shenanigans with his streetcar in those days. He wanted to get light rail, and he had people in his office orchestrating a public body to come out and speak, and so forth and so on. And as we know, the 44,000 riders in the first 20 miles from Santa Teresa to Great American never materialized, and we still have never reached it, in spite of $1 billion of spending. So we need to be sure that the Highway 85 PAB is fair and open. Now, they've already changed the name to Transit Guideway, and that could include bus, that's fine, or road rubber tire transport, whether it's electric or EV or hydrogen powered or whatever. So now I understand that our beloved Santa Clara City Clerk has moved over and is working in Apple, and Apple is being pressured with this head tax, I presume with the leverage on that, to be cooperative in supporting an efficient transportation system. Now, knowing how Diridan works, he means streetcars or some other rail system. We were promised in 1984, when we voted on Measure A, that it would be highway use only, and that can be transit, but highway use only. So please, for South County residents, they need 85 to be widened. There are accidents in De Anza today, the other day at Union. There are accidents on that road because it's just too narrow. So please, let's get it open. Maybe Mr. McAllister or Savita Eternal Life, I know how your name goes, can talk to it. But we need that lane. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chatty, you wanted to speak on a closed session item? I guess, do we take public comment before the closed session or after? Before?
Just very quickly.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sam. Sam, I apologize for being a little aggressive in the previous item for referral. So I'm just asking, is it possible that litigation would be considered against Cheryl Jensen, a longtime opponent of Highway 85, who used to be a county planner, and I believe it was at the same time, if I remember correctly, when Rod Diridan was a county supervisor? Is there any way people are getting hurt out there on the roads? That's the issue. It's not just a money issue. So I hope you can consider some lawsuit back.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we're now retired to closed session. Is that right? Mr. LeBron, how'd you got a card in here somewhere? Okay. You're speaking on closed session?
No.
How did I miss that? I'm sorry.
So I think some of you know that I have been somewhat vocal about my concern with the way Caltrain board meetings are conducted. But this morning went too far. So first of all, at 9:30, we were supposed to have a closed session item, which looked really straightforward, which is terms and conditions for sale of a parcel. So we started 15 minutes late because we didn't have a quorum. Board meeting was supposed to start at 10. The board meeting actually started at 10:45. And the first question I got for you from a Brown Act point of view is how could you possibly have spent over an hour just discussing the terms and conditions of the sale of a parcel? It's what really went on there. Did the attorney somehow interfere and said, look, guys, you're stepping outside the agenda or whatever? But what really got me going is at the end of the meeting, the chair made a comment that, we were running too late. You know what? We started the board meeting 45 minutes late, okay? And we had to start cutting down on public comment. And as far as I'm concerned, that's gone on for long enough. We've had multiple issues with Brown Act violations, with ad hoc committees, which are not open to the public and which have been appointed by the board. There's specific government codes that says that you cannot do this. So my advice to you at this point is to refer this issue to governance and audit and potentially review board assignments, to the Caltrain board meeting. And if nothing happens, I'll be quite frank with you, I get contacts from civil grand jurors looking into Caltrain, and if that's what it takes, that's what's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Savita?
Thank you, Chair. The question was on 8.4D. The third bullet is something about the positive train control system. Do we know, is there anyone who can tell us a little bit more about what the update is?
Positive train control on Caltrain. Yes,
On
Director
Caltrain.
Bruins?
So wait a minute, so what is your question?
It just says received and monthly report update on the positive train control system. So do we know what it is? Are we considering it? I haven't heard anything about this before, so I don't know what the update is.
Okay, so The FRA requires that all the train operators install positive train control. And positive train control basically is a mechanism that is a safety mechanism such that if a
Yes, I know.
So all we're doing every month at Caltrain is we get an update on how we're progressing in terms of the project status. And so we're making forward progress. We actually have had trains out on a test track as we've begun. Well, actually, that's not that was a positive train control. So it's just an update of where we are, and we are on track to be able to meet the FRA's requirement by the end of the year.
Thank you. That's really what I wanted.
Okay, and so, and I'll just add a little bit more color. We switched vendors midstream here, and it has been working out fairly very well in terms of our being able to make the forward progress and meet the schedules.
Thank you so much for that comment, because I was very concerned after the incident in Washington. Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
now I believe we can retire to closed session.
So closed session item 9.1.A has been removed from the agenda. We will discuss items 9.1B through 9.1E during closed session.
Hey, welcome back. All right, to our general counsel, could you please provide a closed session report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were no reportable actions taken for 9.1B, 9.1C, and 9.1D. For 9.1E, the board authorized legal counsel to intervene in litigation. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned, and don't forget to take your tremendous VTA pin with you. Hopefully everybody got one of these. Yeah, these are cool.